Welcome back to another episode of the Prevail Gym podcast. My name is Shannon. I'm the owner of Prevail Gym, and each week I'm answering questions that I get from our members and I'm sharing it with you. This is not a question that I have ever gotten, but I thought that the phrasing would capture your attention. Today we're going to talk about how to not become a frail old lady. Like I said, no one has really come into my office and said, hey, I want to join the gym because I don't want to be a frail old lady. But a lot of times they're talking about the opposite of that. They're talking about, I want to be able to do X, Y, and Z. So today we're going to break down how do you not become frail? Because I want you to imagine that you are 80 years old and you bend down to pick something up off of the floor, or you trip over a little piece of concrete on the sidewalk and you either hesitate to bend down and pick that thing up, or you fall down and you are afraid. You are deathly afraid of breaking a hip and not recovering. So we're going to talk about how do you fight that and what do you need to do. So first, there's confusion between being active and being strong. There are a million different ways that you can be active, and there is a very strong purpose behind activity in general. So things like walking and running, obviously those are good for you. They're going to help build your cardiovascular strength and your endurance. Things like yoga and Pilates are going to help with mobility and muscle endurance. Things like kickboxing, like I said, HIIT classes. There are so many options out there for you to be active, and those are important. Just being outside, playing with your kids, going for walks, like I said, cycling. You need to do those things, and you need to be strong. The misconception is that I'm active and that's good enough. It's not. It is very important, and like I said, there's a ton of benefits to it, but you need to be strong. You need to build muscle, and those activities are not going to build muscle. They're just not going to. Some of those activities, like running, actually break your muscles down because it's a repetitive movement over and over and over again. So we have to build muscle in order to not be a frail old lady. Why? Why does that matter so much to fight being frail? So when your body ages, you do start to lose muscle. We're not going to get technical here. We don't have the papers and the reports, but we know that as we age, we do start to lose muscle if we're not doing something about it. We're not going to dive into perimenopause and menopause and hormones, but if you've done any research at all, you know that once your body gets into those phases and stages of life, things start to go downhill quicker than what they did when you were in your 20s and 30s and early 40s. So we have to fight against that. And the way that we fight against that is by building muscle. So if you're not using your muscles, if you are not building muscle, you are absolutely 100% losing it. You are losing your muscle mass. And we have to have muscle in order to fight being frail. Strength is really not something that's negotiable. In my mind, strength is king or queen, because we're talking about the ladies here. But strength is king. Strength has to be the number one priority. After you have that, then you fill in the gaps with other activities that you enjoy. Things like your yoga, your walking, your running, your kickboxing, your cycling, your swimming. But strength has to be included. Why? Because we're going to lose muscle mass if we don't start lifting and lifting heavy. And if we lose muscle mass, we will be a frail old lady. So we have to. It's not an option. So the other misconception is that lifting weights is strength training. I know that sounds kind of counterintuitive, but just because you are picking up dumbbells does not mean that you are actually strength training. For example, if I go into the gym and I pick up a 20-pound dumbbell and I do 3 sets of 10 goblet squats, and I do that every single Monday and Thursday for 5 years, I'm not going to get stronger. I have to progressively overload my muscles. I have to be lifting heavier. I have to switch between maybe some higher reps of sets of 12 to 15 with some lower rep ranges of 5 to 6. You have to be changing the way that you are lifting with intentionality, with structure, with a progressive plan in order for you to build muscle. So things like Pilates, which are fantastic, usually you're lifting lighter weights and that can burn. You can really feel the burn whenever you're lifting light weights for a long period of time, and that is awesome. But that is not building your muscle mass. You have to be lifting heavy. You have to have some kind of plan and structure, and you have to repeat it over and over and over. Which brings me to my next point. Building muscle takes time. We know that we live in a world of instant gratification. We want to make the change right now, and we want to see the result right now. And that is just not how it works when it comes to building muscle. Building muscle mass takes about 6 to 12 weeks. So you have to stick with it. And a lot of times what we see, or what I've seen with members, is they see an immediate change in their muscle mass because they haven't done anything like this before. It is brand new and their body's like, whoa, I'm a badass. And so you put on all this muscle very quickly and then it kind of levels out. I'm not saying that what you built in the beginning isn't true muscle mass, but your body is kind of adjusting to this new way of training. After you get past that 6-week mark, that's when you're really building the muscle mass. So you have to stick with it. When I was prepping for this, I was trying to come up with an analogy, that's my thing, to try to explain muscle and protection. And the only thing I could come up with is a donut. And it's kind of a shitty example, but that's fine. So I want you to imagine this big fluffy donut. Like we're talking a big donut. And it's not a jelly-filled donut. It's a donut with a hole in the middle, okay? So you're envisioning this big donut, okay? The donut itself, the fluffy dough, is your muscle mass. The hole in the middle is your bone. We, in order to fight being frail and not be a frail old lady, we have to have a big donut, okay? We have to have a lot of muscle to protect the bone in the middle. When we don't lift and we don't do the things that we're talking about today, the donut starts to shrink. And now, instead of having this big fluffy donut that's protecting the bone in the middle, you have this knot. I don't have a good example of like a thin, shitty little donut, but when you don't build that muscle mass and you don't have healthy muscle mass, you don't have a lot to protect your bones. And that's when you go to the doctor and they start using a word called osteoporosis. And then you start having conversations about breaking bones and not recovering. And then that's the end of your story. That is the brutal truth about how this works. So we need to build big donuts. We have to build so much muscle mass to protect the bone in the middle, because if we don't and we fall down, we're gonna break our bones, and who knows how that story is going to pan out. So your muscle mass, not only is it protecting your bone to help make sure that you're not becoming a frail old lady, but it helps you stay capable. If you think of the things that you do day to day, like walking up the stairs, even sitting on the toilet, bending down to get something up off of the floor, pushing something up overhead, you have to have strength to do that. And as we age, if we're not building muscle mass and we're not building strength, those day-to-day activities become more and more difficult. And next thing you know, you're on the floor and you are unable to get yourself up because you don't have the strength, you don't have the muscle to make that happen. So the last piece of this is fueling our body for growth. In a previous podcast episode, we talked about why you're not building muscle, and I used the analogy of planting a seed. We're going to talk about it again. So when you plant a seed, you can plant it in the perfect soil, a place that gets the perfect amount of sunshine. And then you only water it 70% of the water that it needs. That plant will grow a little bit. And at a certain point, it won't be able to grow anymore because it doesn't have what it needs. your muscles work the same way. So if you are exercising the way that you need to exercise, if you are recovering the way that you need to recover, but you are not fueling your body the way that it needs to be fueled to build, you will not build muscle mass. Again, you'll see something very quick in the beginning, but it will not last. So when you are in a mindset of building, we need to stop thinking about burning as many calories as possible. We need to stop thinking about less and limiting and minimizing. And we need to think about more and building and fueling. If we're not fueling our body enough, it will not build. And if we're not building muscle, we become a frail old lady. It all works together. So in closing, to kind of wrap this all up, we need to lift heavy, okay? We need to be challenging ourselves on our weights. We need to be prioritizing strength training first, and then fill in the gaps with other ways that you like to be active, with walking and running or whatever it may be. And we need to be fueling our body enough so that way our body can build muscle. We will not be a generation of frail old ladies. I refuse to accept that. We're gonna do everything that we can to fight against that. But you have to switch your mentality from burning and less and minimize and light weights and just walking to building. You are going to build as much muscle as possible so that way you are not a frail old lady when you are 80 years old. I hope that you guys have the best day today. Get out there, keep prevailing, and I'll see you next week.